Israeli experts behind the world's first trial testing the efficacy of a fourth COVID booster say that while the shot raises antibody levels, it's not good enough to substantially stop infections of the Omicron variant. Last month, the health ministry began offering fourth vaccine shots to Israelis 60 and older, the immunocompromised, and medical workers. According to the Times of Israel, at least 500,000 Israelis have received an additional booster.
And in other booster news, there's no evidence that healthy children and teens need booster shots, shared World Health Organization Chief Scientist Dr. Soumya Swaminathan then yesterday. So I bet I know what you're going to say, Kim. You're going to say that we just need the fifth booster, and then everything will be okay, right? Right? I'm putting words in your mouth. I'm sorry. I didn't want to steal your talking point today.
No, that's absolutely right. We just need to do one more. This study is really interesting. First of all, I just want to mention that the World Health Organization has said previously that no one needs booster shots. They were kind of against these wealthy countries rolling out even the third jab. So it makes sense to me that they would stay along those lines and say children don't need those. And they might be onto something because, as we're seeing, these vaccines do wear off. They're not preventing infection. But when it comes to this Israeli study, what's really interesting about it is so the other boosters and the other shots would allow for some prevention of infection, a pretty robust prevention of infection for a period of time, roughly about 12 weeks. Some say less than that, some say a little bit longer than that, but it was roughly around that time. And now what they're saying is this one doesn't even prevent it really at all, like even right after you get it. So what the second thing that's really interesting about this is, if you remember early on, people would say, okay, we need the booster because a lot of vaccines need boosters. They don't maybe work after 2 doses. You need a third in order to get that robust immunity. And many of us, when we get a vaccine, we believe that means we're not going to get the illness. When you get the measles vaccine, you believe you're not going to get the measles. And so then, we thought, well, okay, maybe you need a fourth in order to stop infection. And they're saying, no, it's less protective against infection than even the second and the third dose against other variants.
Yeah,
so I think that's really interesting.
It's just protective. It's protective against severe disease and death, which is important and worthwhile for a lot of people, obviously. But we have to get out of the mindset that we just need to vax and then boost and boost and boost, in order to, because that's not affecting cases. That's what we're seeing here. So it's the wrong mindset to have. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the vaccines or that they're harmful or that they're working to keep people out of the hospitals, and that's great. But we're not going to get cases under control with them. We're just not.
And given the fact that it is effective against severe disease and death, that makes the calculation about what kind of justice ought to be done with the vaccines that much easier. If it's not that effective in stopping infections as a fourth booster, but it is effective at saving lives, then you give it to people who haven't gotten it yet. Because there are still billions of people around the world who are unvaccinated and are completely vulnerable to death or hospitalization from the infection if they have a comorbidity, which we are a sick population, not just in the United States but around the world. So that's a lot of people. So it pushes the reasoning even further toward prioritizing, making it available.
A priority
to
that's shifted
everybody.
Because you'll hear from health officials that, oh yeah, we really got to get those additional boosters. And have you gotten your latest round of booster yet? Which, who are you? Right. You're not going to convince. And it's a misallocation of not of resources necessarily, because we have enough resources for everyone to get as much vaccination as they want, at least in America. But it's a misallocation of your attention, of the public messaging campaigns.
But I mean globally.
Attention, yeah, globally,
It's time. If people around the world who haven't been vaccinated yet should be the priority.
Yeah.
Particularly in the wake of results like this. So
but in Africa, there's a low uptake in Africa, but there's also low incidence of death in Africa. So they're not feeling this urge or this necessity in order to take it when their populations just aren't falling as sick as certain other populations. And that probably has a lot to do with obesity. And I think we need to start being honest about who is truly at risk when it comes to COVID. Now, that might change from variant to variant, and that's the science we need, right? But, I think what we need to also find out is how long these vaccines last against that severe illness. If you are somebody and you are in your 70s or 80s and these vaccines only last, let's say, 6 months against severe illness, you might be willing to do it every 6 months, and you might be willing to go into your 15th, 16th, 17th jab because it's keeping you protected from something that could very well kill you if you're in that category. And I think that's something people should know about, right? Other people, people might say they don't ever need it until they're at a point in their life where they're going to be in that category of severe disease. So these are the types of conversations I think we need to shift it to. But
for the elderly, I think that's certainly the case. I mean, even like we're saying, it's just like the flu. Well, elderly people should get a flu vaccine every flu season when flu is heating up, to keep them safe because the flu can kill you if you're old, if you're in bad health. So it is like that. Like that's what we've been saying. It is like the flu. Right. So if you're in this vulnerable category, you're gonna get your jab every once a year, twice a year, or something.
Yeah. So, and meanwhile, in Beijing, where the Winter Olympics are set to be held in a matter of weeks, the city's first case of Omicron has been detected. However, CCP officials are blaming a piece of infected mail from Toronto. Not so sure about that. The Omicron case has triggered Beijing, a city of 20 million people, to totally lock down in accordance with China's zero COVID policies. This will get interesting.
Yeah, you got to wonder what their agenda is. I mean, for them to say now that it's infected mail, I mean, we know that it's not on, it dies so quickly on surfaces. Yeah. I mean, we know that you're breathing this in. Yeah, so then it just kind of makes you wonder.
So then you can't do food delivery either? Like, what's the, the logical implications of that are just fall into absurdity immediately.
I just feel like they're trying to drive us crazy a little bit. Like maybe it's like a form of warfare in a way where it's psychological warfare. Like, oh, now you can't even open your mail. You can't touch things, Just right when people are getting to a point where they're wanting to live their lives again, the Chinese come out and say, no, you can't, your mail is infected. I don't know. It
it's the zero COVID delusion. I feel nothing but pity for people who suffer under the tyranny of governments that still believe in the zero COVID delusion. It's not going to happen. They can wait as long as they want. This thing is never going away. And then when you open, then it's going to rampage through your population. That's what's going to happen. It's unavoidable.
Trust their numbers. Well,
I don't trust their numbers at all anyway. Yeah,
I don't trust their numbers either. There's no way. They're a landlocked, not totally landlocked, but they have land borders. And we know that there's people smuggling. We know that there is a human trafficking ring that goes from Vietnam into China. So people are crossing the border. They're getting into the country. I'm sure they're coming in through the Xinjiang region. I'm sure they're coming in through Mongolia. There's no way they have been able to keep this virus out of their country when everywhere else in the world is getting it, except for remote islands. If you could keep, if you're New Zealand, okay, maybe you have a better shot at it, but not China.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There. It's hard to find good information on this. I've been surprised at the lack of reporting from anyone on what the real Chinese numbers are. I've been very surprised by it, frankly. There's a lot of, I think a lot of people are not necessarily, by people I mean reporters, journalists, are not necessarily believing the China numbers, but have no other basis of information, so are just kind of like, these are the numbers, make of them what you will.
You've seen people try to dive into the number of registered cell phones and how many cell phones are no longer registered to people, and that's the extent that people have gone to try to figure out what effect there's been on just the population. But it's such a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that they have a lot of background immunity from previous coronaviruses that we don't get over here that have been circulating around. And so maybe it's not as detectable there, or maybe it's not as severe over there. I mean, there's a possibility of that. I just don't believe their numbers at all. And then on top of it, you get these reports that China's economy has increased more than any other country in the world. And of course, during the pandemic, when we were all locked down in 2020, they were the only ones that had any sort of growth while everybody else suffered. I mean, it's all very suspicious.
It's, highly suspicious. Unbelievable, in fact. Tomorrow on Rising, Senate candidate Lucas Kunce joins us to discuss a push to ban members of Congress from owning stocks.
And Marianne Williamson will discuss the future of the Democratic Party.
So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a video. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you then.